on this bandwagon of genuinely being surprised. The cynic in me tends to think maybe they're not really that surprised, but they have to pretend that they're surprised. Not that they knew about specific individuals, but just broadly what happens when people are very powerful. And certainly everybody knew the situation or the reality with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted, and they were very happy to continue rubbing shoulders with him. That piece was sort of an open secret, just like Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood was an open secret. They look the other way until it is impossible to ignore. And maybe, again, that edifice is cracking a little bit, where you even see prominent people on the left calling attention to this further. And I think the big long and short outcome of it is trust in institutions, trust in power structures and powerful people is at such a low in our culture and in our society right now. And this is just only going to further corroborate that in people's minds, that we're being basically ruled and run by a bunch of folks that think they can do whatever and consequences don't apply to them. And maybe the reality is so far they haven't.
Now, we have another member of the squad whose financial windfall is under the spotlight. Kosher Democrat Ayanna Pressley is facing some tough questions.
Where did you make all this income from the rental property?
Sir, I submit a financial disclosure just like everybody else. There's nothing to see here. Thank you.
Is it appropriate for members to make so much money when they're in office? Should there be rules there? Financial disclosure reports show that the wealth of Pressley and her husband Conan Harris swelled from $12,000 in 2019 to as much as $8 million. 5 rental properties earn them up to $350,000 annually. Pressley once advocated to suspend rent during the pandemic. She pushed policies for struggling homeowners.
These little to no cost bills help people remain housed.
Pressley's husband is an ex-con who went from serving a decade in jail before they were married for drug trafficking to raking in up to $1 million a year as a business and management consultant.
There are many times where we can see that the spouse is the person who may be bringing in the most income.
Some lawmakers resist restrictions on outside earnings. Do you think that there should be changes, some different rules about what members can make while they're in office?
These are presumably right-wing reports designed to try to undermine our members.
Kosher, what more can you tell me about this issue? It extends beyond Pressley. The spotlight recently has been on.
Look, it's on both sides. They enrich themselves. I showed you guys that video yesterday of the line going up, and that was the people. The red line were the people in government. Okay. And it didn't start coming down to like 22, 23. But they're making 2,000 plus % over what normal people are making wealth-wise. They're like roughly like what, 2,400%, something ridiculous. You don't make anything. You're not Apple. You're not selling cell phones. You're not selling shoes. You're not selling any fashion. How are you making all this money? How are you attaining all this wealth off the backs of the American people? Just saying.
On Nancy Pelosi and Omar as well.
This is a long-standing issue. The zip code of the neighborhoods around D.C. is the richest zip code in America, and it is a zip code that has no businesses, nothing is created, nothing is made. It's just these folks doing these kinds of investments. She's right over there, Congressman Pressley, that they do have to make financial disclosures. And so from that, we can see that her net worth when she entered Congress was $12,000, and now it's around $6 million. Omar, you mentioned, had a negative net worth, which she attributes to having student loan debt when she entered Congress, and now she and her husband together to the tune of $8 million. Nancy Pelosi, the most famous example of all, she and her husband had a net worth of $600,000 to $700,000 when they entered Congress, and today they're north of $100 million. It all comes from sort of like what we touched on with the Clinton initiative, not illegal on the face illegal activity. It's just investments that they do. But really what's underneath the investment is that they're trading influence. This is what everybody understands it to be. They're trading influence for affluence. And that means that whether they're investing in wineries or startups or VC funds or real estate or stocks, it's usually a combination of those things. They just make these outsized returns, which suggests that people are paying or into their companies or hiring them for consultancies or board seats or what have you, not because they have expertise or merit in that particular domain, but because they have power or they're proximate to power. Hunter Biden is another one.
They're basically paying for access. She's for what she's saying in her diatribe. It's a long way around and saying these people are paying for access. Either they're going to pay the spouse to access what the representative is doing. And the thing about it is, when Hakeem Jeffries was asked a question, and it is a good question. Here's my thing. If your spouse should not be involved in any government contracting, nor any of your friends, nor anybody that you know around you. If you have a connection to anyone who has a government contract, it's a conflict of interest. One of two things needs to happen. Either the contract needs to be pulled from that person, or you need to cease to have any communications with them. Because if they're communicating with you, that's access. And let's just say somebody gets a government contract and then they decide to donate to a particular campaign for a representative. Well, they might give them a wonderful, really large donation. You're giving them that large donation so you can get access. You're not giving them money because you just are just championing what they do. No, there's a give and a take here. They're buying a vote. Because see, here's the thing with corporations. They can make bills and they can pay bills, but they cannot vote. And that's the simplest way of seeing it. Because a lot, it's like something I learned when I was in paralegal school, is that a company can act as a person, but it can't vote, which means it can make bills and it can pay bills, but it cannot vote as a person actually has a singular vote. But the influence that they are paying for with these politicians, that's what they're doing. That's how they're getting everything to side with them. So Ayanna Pressley, during COVID, she was able to enrich herself, but she was writing the legislation that allowed it. Oh, we really need to make sure that those who are, landlords basically don't get jilted out of their property. But there were a lot of people that did, right? Because they had those rent freezes, remember? People weren't paying rent, but that didn't mean that the mortgages still needed to be paid, right? And so when people went into default, who was there to just prop it up? Vanguard and BlackRock. In certain instances. But in certain instances, Ayanna Pressley made sure that she was protected by the legislation that she was a part of. It's stuff like that that need members of Congress removed, because you are using your position to enrich yourself, and that should never be happening. And that's, the conversation that we're having here.
One I should throw into that, getting $80,000 a month for a board seat at a Ukrainian energy company. So it's those sorts of deals happen. And as the overall cost of living goes up and wages are stagnant for the everyday American, it just further breeds that discontent with those who are ruling over us and legislating over us.
I wonder if Hunter Biden is still getting those sorts of offers, earning $80,000 per month to sit on a board in an industry he knew nothing about, or getting, $500,000 a painting for his little
Hunter the artist.
Amateur hour squiggles. But I wonder if those paintings are still selling like they were when his father was in the White House. I mean, really, they're not even subtle about it. Now, before you go, we discussed earlier in the week the good news that it seems like Kamala Harris is back. She wants to be president. She's relaunching her website and Kamala headquarters. Let's see how she explains here why voter ID laws could make it impossible for minorities to vote. Just try to follow the reasoning. Oh, kosher. I've missed her word salads. But we played some CNN analysis last week showing that the overwhelming majority of Americans, around 85%, want voter ID laws, and yet the Democrats are resisting it and using any excuse, no matter how ridiculous, to justify why voter ID is going to be a setback for democracy.
What she was attempting to explain there with that circular logic has been the long-running argument that people opposed to this policy make, that somehow it's impossible or it's difficult or it's prejudicial to require people from rural communities to go and get ID, which is such a pejorative thing to say, that you're basically saying they're incapable of doing something simple as getting ID. But they say that, and as a result of that, many people believe that it's only for one reason: you don't want ID. Why? Because you want to contaminate the election with people when you have a country with tens of millions of illegals, some of them sneaking through and voting, right? Which is what it's about. And the Democrats have always been openly against it. Republicans have been quite feckless, where they just haven't been able to push it through, and we're getting closer to seeing them do that under the current administration's support. So let's hope that they do, because this is a very fundamental thing for democracy, which they love to talk about, and it's outrageous when 80% of the country supports it that they can't get it done.
Yeah, and she's right. Now, here's the thing with this SAVE Act. It is not a funding bill. It is not a budgetary line item. Now, they used the excuse last time, that's why we had that government shutdown, that they were like, hey, we can't push it through because this is funding. Okay, well, this isn't funding. This is fundamental for our country. Yes, people should have to prove that they are actually a citizen, whether born or naturalized, right? And I'm excluding those who have parents that are here illegally and they were birthed on the soil. I'm excluding you guys out of this particular conversation because we're still dealing with that, right? That's a side issue. But for those who properly naturalized, right? And those that are born citizens, yeah, it should be very easy to prove your citizenship when you register to vote, and if you have to prove it again when you go to vote. And the reason why we have to do that is because there's been severe cheating in our elections. And they always like to say, oh, it's just less than 1%. There's no fraud. Then show your paperwork. Hey, let's have an audit party. That's what I'm saying. Let's audit everything. And let's find out, why do we have 19 states that don't require ID if everything is just above board? What are we talking about? Stop that. And Democrats need to stop belittling people. I came across a video. I'm not going to share it with you guys, but I guess it was Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren. And she was just like, can you imagine having your birth certificate doesn't show your current name and it has to match. I'm like, are you dumb? Of course they're not going to match. Because as a woman, you probably had a different last name when you were born than the one that you took when you got married. What is wrong with you? What is really wrong with you? Now, there are some people that do keep their maiden name for purposes of maybe they're in entertainment, right? Stay consistent, or maybe even in Congress. They do not go by their married name. They keep their maiden name just to keep paperwork consistent. Is there anything wrong with it? No. They have an agreement with their husband. VP Harris is a prime example. She does not share the same last name as her husband. She has kept Harris because they got married, I want to say when she was in Congress, but up until that time, she was Harris. And instead of changing her name and having to, in essence, rebrand herself, she kept her maiden name. There's not a problem with that. But some people have different purposes. Women get married in this country. Some people keep their last name. Some people have their name hyphenated. Some people take on the married name of the person they get married to. And in those cases, that's why you have to have your birth certificate. Not just to prove your citizenship, right? But to also prove that you had that ascension from your maiden name to your married name. Because you know what goes on your marriage license? Your maiden name. And there needs to be a connection there. So I need people to stop it. Stop being ignorant about this. It's really sad. It's not just annoying. It is disparaging. In my opinion, the way they're treating people right now, it's like, well, you're just not smart enough to do this process. And we're just going to have to think it through for you. Yeah, that part, right? Let's check out this take from Scott Jennings on CNN on the SAVE Act.
What voting rights is he taking away from black voters? Oh, if we look at
the SAVE Act?
The SAVE Act, that's exactly what we're talking about. That is actually going to continue to disenfranchise overwhelmingly a lot of people of color. There are so many civil rights organizations that have run the data. If we look at the way that it is going to disenfranchise black voters, it's the same reason why Chuck Schumer called it Jim Crow 2.0.
So,
this is the same president. If we want to continue...
You haven't said how yet.
I am talking about it. It's the way that you're putting new poll taxes on this when you're making people have... That's what we can call them now. It's kind of an idiom, right? If you want to say that people have to prove that they are citizens, that they have to prove with a voter ID, the reality is you're layering what is a constitutional right for the American people and making it harder for people to vote in this country, and it's going to disenfranchise black voters.
Concern you that you're making all these claims? You've yet to lay out how it's hurting anyone, but 76% of black voters think we should show an ID to vote. 80% of Hispanic voters, 83% of the American people. Are you saying that black voters are too dumb to know what's good for them? I mean, it sounds pretty condescending to me.
That's not
three-quarters of black voters who want voter ID.
But to be clear, the SAVE Act is not just about IDs. The SAVE Act is about proof of citizenship.
So what?
So it doesn't.
It also makes it very hard for married women who've changed
I was just going to say, we talked about this before.
It's not.
It actually, there's an argument to be made that red state voters, women, poor white voters could be just as.
I know you think they're dumb too, don't you? I mean, that's the thing. I hear these arguments. I've heard Democrats all week long.
No, please don't. No, you listen.
There's a deflection from talking about Donald Trump's racism.
I'm actually
there.
You should be thinking about your constituents or your.
Yeah, I think they're smart enough to figure out how to register to vote.
Hold on. Most Americans don't have a passport. Many Americans don't have access to their birth certificate. Many women, a majority of women who change their names for marriage have to provide additional proof that they've changed their legal names in order to register to vote.
I have heard Democrats
Scott, why don't you actually respond to the substance of what I'm saying?
I am, and
as opposed to making this about something that it's not.
You're saying
it's not just about voter ID.
Married
it's
women,
also about
black
who has
voters,
access
and rural people are too stupid to figure out how to register to vote.
No, that's not.
That is not what
Democrats
she
making
said.
this argument all the time. It's crazy.
That is not what she said.
Let me offer the proof. Let me offer the proof.
Are you saying they can't figure out how to vote?
Exact same.
He's not wrong.